Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Karen Gridley. I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri Statewide Independent Living Council. I appreciate you all joining us today. Our SPIL Committee, State Plan for Independent Living. As we go through the presentation, if we run into an acronym that we're just throwing out there and you don't know what it is, say something, raise your hand, say something in the chat. Wendy Neckemeyer. Yay. Wendy Neckemeyer is going to be monitoring that for us so that we can stop and make sure everybody's following along with us. I wanted to go ahead and ask you, if you have not already put your name and your organization in the chat, we'd really appreciate it if you did that so we can have a record of who was here visiting with us. We want this to be a very formal, not formal, very informal, interactive, relaxed meeting. So please feel free to ask a question. Like I said, if you want to put it in the chat or you want to raise your hand, Wendy will be watching that. And without further ado, I would like to go ahead and turn this over to Pat Chambers, who is going to be working us through the first little bit of our program. Pat?
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I mentioned this, this is for me, and I've been working with the Silk through centers for now over 25 years. This is the largest, most diverse gathering that I've seen for a state plan for independent living, or SPIL, in all of that time. This is tremendous, and I appreciate everybody's interest, and we'll try to explain. My job this morning is to kind of give you a little bit of background on the SPIL and what it can mean, not just for centers, but for Missouri's disability advocates, because that's really what a state plan is all about. I've lost track, but the SPIL is supposed to be done every 3 years, run for 3 federal fiscal years, so October 1 through September 30th. I know we get, especially in centers, get kind of messed up when you talk about a state fiscal year and a federal fiscal year, but the SPIL, because it is federally mandated, is a federal fiscal year. But because with the changeover from the RSA, and I'll talk about that in a minute, to ACL, there's been some extensions and some changes there. When I got started in being involved with the state plan back in the late 1990s, a state plan is required not only from all 50 states, but also from all provinces. So the Virgin Islands and Guam and Puerto Rico, etc., they are also required to submit that. It was a very, very bureaucratic setup through RSA, and I know some people on this call today have been involved with centers under the RSA days, which was Rehab Services Administration. And then over the years, with the many complaints that the federal government was getting about RSA and bureaucrats and not really understanding or listening to the disability voice that the state plan is all about, the ACL, Administration for Community Living, came about. In the late 1990s and 2000s, in Missouri, the state plan committee became a subcommittee from MoSIL, Missouri Center for Independent Living, and the SILC. And I think there was about 5 or 6 of us that every 2 or 3 years would meet at the old the center in Jefferson City here. ILRC was located in a nice conference room. And Stephanie, I'm guessing you're on this morning. I didn't see you, but I was appointed to bring all the chocolate candy, Sarah McDowell and I. So we had treats while we were trying to work on the SPIL, and the 6 or 7 of us would come up with it over usually a 6-month period. There was really not a lot of effort, as Tammy will remember, Tammy McSorley, that to get to seek a lot of opinion or information from outside of that initial committee. We'd submit it, and then under the circumstances at that time, the SILC was under voc rehab. So we'd come up with it, the centers would sign off, then it would go to voc rehab, they would review the document, they would sign off. And it would go through. So it was probably in the mid 20-teens when we really started to pay attention to the SILC for what it can be and what it should be, and that is a resource to help all of the providers, not just the 22 centers for independent living, but all of the providers who work with Missouri's disabled community to put forth and to advocate for all of the needs of the disabled community in the state of Missouri, and then to develop those needs and see that not just a document has come up that with the feds that met the requirement, but we're also seeking then to achieve the goals and the focus of what the state plan is all about. Yes, it was for many years, and not just in Missouri, but in a lot of states. I had the good fortune to go to several SILC Congress, which is the State Plan for Independent Living councils that are required in every state, and listen to the positive and a lot of negative comments about a spill. And it was treated in Missouri like it was in a lot of places. We're required to do this every 3 years. We'll put it out. We'll wait for the feds to come back and tell us to change or fix something, which was inevitable, and then we move forward. And probably it was a former executive director at the Whole Person in Kansas City, a gentleman by the name of David Robinson, who said, folks, we need to work on this not just every 3 years, but every year, and monitor what we're supposed to be achieving and working for and putting it forward. For those of you, and I see a lot of names and people that I'm not familiar with, and that's great. It's so nice. I know that Mike and Tammy and Juan and people that have been around for a while know that the future of the disability efforts in the state of Missouri deal with not just 22 centers, but with all, inclusive of not just the centers, but all of the partners who work with disability focused goals in their day-to-day workings. The state plan is very often it's not a core service. That's the thing. We have 5 core services in independent living. The state plan may or may not involve any of those plans. It's up to each state to develop what they think the future needs of the disability community are. If you look at what its goal is and what it's intended for, and really what I think ACL is bringing to the table in the change from RSA to ACL, is that it gives disability partners and centers, and if I just say centers, please excuse me, because I do mean all of the disability partners inclusive, but it gives us more than just what VR requires for us to do, and that's a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, short-term and long-term goals, but it gives us a blueprint, a working blueprint to develop the needs that are needed across the state of Missouri. And that's why it's great. I see people here from Bales. I see people in the central part of the state. I see St. Louis. I see the Whole Person, Columbia, Jim at Delta Center in St. Louis. We all have in our catchment, our respective catchment areas, we have needs that we identify. They're a little different. Some centers, some people are really into doing ramps and home modifications, assistive equipment, things that may not be as vital or as important in other parts of the state where another partner may be providing that. But it gives us a chance as the state of Missouri as a whole to develop and identify what the needs are that we're hearing, that our staffs are out on the street day to day, the boots on the ground, what we're doing. And the gentleman that I need to go back and talk about that for a little bit, but Gary Mall was a gentleman who, with Voc Rehab, was the director of IL services for over 26 years. And for those of you that came after Gary or don't know Gary, you could not have had a greater partner who was committed to working with the centers and identifying and kind of keep us on the straight and narrow than Gary Mall was. The Gary Mall Memorial Scholarship through the SILK is something that was developed several years ago to maintain his memory and try to help young people in our state have an opportunity to go to vocational school, go to college, go to university. But Gary kind of kept us all on the straight and narrow. And you know, if we were acting up, and those of you that remember, if we got off the track a little bit, we get a state meeting, and it wasn't "you are invited." It was "you will attend a meeting on such and such a date at such and such a location, such a time." The state plan gives us what Gary reminded us often that we need, and that is a resource, something that can be used to be more than a federal requirement. It gives us a blueprint, a plan to seek the needs of the disabled community in the state of Missouri, and then to develop a plan. That's how we're going to pursue those. True story, and I'm trying to think if I see anybody on here that was involved in that, but there was a meeting here in Jeff City at the old Truman Hotel back in the early 2000s. And the 5-year plan, the original IL waiver, which was the predecessor to CDS, was coming up for renewal. It had expired or was expiring, and so the feds came out of Washington, and they came to talk about us, and centers and providers started talking about things that were being identified when you did a needs assessment, when you went into somebody's home and you needed a needs assessment, and the needs assessment revealed that this individual needed a walker, a quad cane, a bedside commode, need advocacy. And then as these needs were being identified, the respective center the person would say, well, we went and we purchased this from United Way funds, or we worked with the local Red Cross, or we did this or that. And the federal, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but the bureaucrats or the pencil pushers and the paper checkers that were there had stopped us and asked 2 or 3 times, "You mean you were actually going out and getting a walker for that person? You're actually helping that person?" Well, yeah, that's the next step. But they were just not in tune to the fact they expected us to identify the needs, but not then to pursue and achieve the needs of these individuals. And the state plan's it. Yeah, we have to check off when we do this or that, and there's now 1-year and 3-year plans and how we go through and identify what's in the plan and what's been achieved, but we are achieving that. And I hope that as we go forward and the new plan comes together and we ask everybody to sign off, that you realize that it's a resource. Yes, we have to pursue and have to offer as independent living centers and providers the 5 core services of independent living. We should, and I challenge and encourage everyone to remember that the state plan is actually a wider and a more valuable resource in developing and achieving the needs of Missouri's disability community. So what is developed in the state plan, it's again fabulous to see this many people involved today. But don't stop with just this group, and that's a great start, but take it to the faith-based organizations in your community, to the service organizations in your community, to your first responders, to firefighters and police and the local community disaster coordinators. Make this a known document. This is what we're achieving, because they don't know if we don't share what we're trying to do and the resources that we can offer and that they can offer to us, because it can snowball, and it should snowball. This is a great starting point. But let's take the state plan, share it, develop it, and keep it as the goals for Missouri's disability advocates, associates, and partners to achieve for the next 3 years. And then I ask all of you that are here today, when the next bill starts to come up and development for that, please listen to what you're hearing in your community from your staffs, from your associates, and bring it to the table, because it may be just we achieved this part of the goal, but now where do we go from that goal? Or there's a goal that we're not identifying now. Technology changes things. We couldn't have had this meeting 5 years ago. Out of COVID and everything, the one silver lining is that this kind of platform, virtual meetings, instead of driving to Jeff City, and I remember when Rob Holman was up in Merrill, you know, and Tim Shaw Bales, you know, from Kennett to Jeff City is a 6-hour drive, and if you came for a 2-hour meeting, it was very hard to justify a 12-hour round trip for a 2 or 3 hour meeting. We can do that now with social media, which is an outcome, I really think, of COVID. Share what we're doing. It's not our little secret. We're not keeping secrets. We need to all contribute to the growth of services, program services, and advocacy for the disability community in the state of Missouri. So please keep that in mind as we develop and finalize this bill and all the bills in the future. Please continue to be an advocate, a spokesperson, and if we do that, then we will certainly be achieving the goals needed for the quality of life for the disabled community in the state of Missouri. And Karen, with that, I'll get off my soapbox, but if there's anyone that have any questions on the history, the background, or that, I'd be happy to answer those. But I appreciate this opportunity this morning. Again, thank you all for being here. And that's my 2 cents for this morning.
Much, Pat. I wanted to follow that up with a couple of points that Pat has made. That what is the state plan for independent living? Basically, it boils down to the SPIL is a strategic plan created. It's a plan created with input from people with disabilities, their families, friends, and people who work with people with disabilities. So basically, everybody. It's written for 3 years. We can amend it as we go through the 3 years. If we see we're needing to expand a goal, if we see we're needing to change focus of a goal, we can ask for amendments in that on a yearly basis. And we update that quarterly. The centers will send in information, a Survey Monkey with information on what you've been working on. We take that information, and at the end of the year, we send in a update to the SPIL to ACL Administration for Community Living, and let them know how we're moving along with the spill. So how do we get that information? Well, like Pat said, we rely on you. We rely on you putting requests out into the community. We rely on you filling out our surveys. And I wanted to share the screen here real quick and show you the survey that we've been working on. I know a number of you have seen it, our Spill Consumer Info Survey, and that's not it. My apologies. We'll get there though. Give me a second here. There we go. Why, thank you for the balloons, David. There we are. So I know you've seen the survey and you've been sharing it with your consumers. We're really happy. As Pat said, in the past, we may not have had a lot of consumer input other than, people working at centers. Right now, we're standing at 130, which I think is a very good number for us so far. And as you see, person with a disability is over 50% of where our answers are. And people that work for a Center for Independent Living, again, 51 people. But we also have parents that has a child or a family member. They work for a nonprofit or even a for-profit, because as Pat said, everybody that works with the disability community, we want their input. I'm a community advocate. So this just gives everything in words as opposed to pretty pictures. And
Karen, can I interrupt for a minute?
Sure.
I'm sorry. And I am sorry, just you reminded me of something that happened several years ago, and Shelby may remember this. There was a gentleman who was very involved with independent living centers over the years by the name of Gary Maddox. Gary was the ED in Springfield for many years. He was a whole person. He was also the ED at Access 2 in Gallatin for a while. But Gary was very involved in emergency preparedness for individuals with disabilities. When he got to Greene County, and for those of you that may or may not know, Greene County is a Springfield area, very, very pro emergency preparedness. It's Tornado Alley, it's a lot of things. But Gary hadn't been in Springfield very long. And they had the Greene County Emergency Management had a simulation on emergency response and a disaster. And so they had this set up, and they invited the emergency responders, the disability communities in the Springfield area, to come to the event. Well, it had rained for several days. And it was muddy in this big field that they had these people, and they were going to do triage. And so the person that was running the disaster, when they couldn't get the wheelchairs or the gurneys to go through the mud, the director of this disaster said, well, triage is over there, so everybody get them, just walk over to triage. And Gary, if you knew Gary Maddox, he about lost his marbles. You can't tell someone who is a wheelchair user or doesn't have or has significant mobility issues to just get up and walk over to the next station. And I think that opened the eyes of the people in Springfield, again, one of the most major areas in the state of Missouri, that you need to have the disability voice at the table. There's an expression that I haven't heard for a lot of years, but used to be very common: nothing about us without us. So don't be making policies and procedures for the disability community without having their voice at the table. And in Karen's review here of the response and the number of people with disabilities that have responded to this is an example of that. No one that is not dealing with a disability personally or family member, whatever, really can understand the needs of the disability community. So nothing about us without us. We need to make sure that if we're representing, we have their voice is a major role, is a major voice in all the planning and preparation and response.
I mixed my Garys up, so
Mhm.
and then the
Gary
survey.
Maddox and his wife are now living in Russia.
Yeah, we can get him up in the middle of the night. As the survey goes on, it asks, what type of disability people experience, and we wanted to make sure that we were including all disabilities that we could encounter, neurological, environmental, blind, deaf. There's a lot that centers do with people with physical disabilities. So we wanted to make sure that we gathered from the whole range of people with disabilities, because this plan is for the people with disabilities in the state of Missouri. So again, numbers. And we were curious to see how many people answered our questions that had congenital disabilities and acquired disabilities. So you can see it's running a little about 50-50. Okay, and we wanted some information on male, female, just for demographics. And surprisingly, we do have, some people that were non-binary. We also had some people that just didn't want to answer. So we're happy to provide those options. And age range, again, we wanted to make sure we got a good age range. It looks like, the 25 to 55 are our core ones. So, and we wanted to make sure that we got the seniors as well. We do have connections with the AAA area agencies on aging, and with AARP. So we wanted to make sure that we were getting the people that were wanting to age in place at home. And then we wanted to make sure that people were able to identify the center in their area. We have 25 that didn't know or didn't go to this link to see where their centers are. We'll kind of pull those out and send that information to the centers so that they can possibly know where where some of their gaps in advertising are. Oh, thank you, Jeanette. We're trying really hard to be very inclusive. So it'll show you here kind of the centers that are, getting the word out. We've got a few that we're still working on. And surprisingly, over 80% are not receiving services from a center that are answering this survey. And we have a few that are unsure, but so that tells us we're getting community people in here to answer the questions, which is going to be very helpful in the long run. It goes down through the counties and we can sort that out and send you information on a specific county if you'd like that. Okay, and same with zip codes. So the biggest barriers to living independently for people with disabilities: choose all that apply. And I think we're seeing here overwhelmingly transportation and housing, which is not unusual. Usually employment's in that top 3, but coming out of COVID, social isolation and access to peer support, along with obtaining and maintaining personal care assistance. So that tells us that maybe, not maybe, we're probably going to end up, writing a goal that addresses social isolation, or, developing peer support in the community. And it goes on down, access to benefits, need assistance with technology, So, that's why we brought David in, David Baker with Missouri Assistive Technology, access to legal services. One of the Silk's ex officio members is Tom, I'm going to screw it up, Tom Pittmanger with Missouri Protection and Advocacy. So that's information that they can use to say, hey, that's a goal that we can work with centers to maybe meet. Again, numbers. And we had some questions that were fill in the blank. We can tease these out and send you more information, especially if there's a specific naming of a center in an area that perhaps you could reach out to that person, and get more information on how maybe your services can help. Okay. And this information, Wendy just reminded me, this information is open to everybody. If you're needing information that we can pull out for your counties that maybe you could use for a grant, or you could use for your reporting, we're happy to do that. There's some really good, you're going to have answers like funding and more focus on safe housing, but you're also going to have some really thought out answers here that can really give you some input and maybe give you an idea of somebody that you can pull in as a partner at your center. How do you measure your sales success? Maybe just give you an idea of what consumers, what people in the community are seeing as a benefit. How can SILS better provide services to all people with disabilities? Again, there's a lot of comments regarding, knowing about services, partnering more with DD, the DD Council, the DD programs, regional centers. And I know that they're reaching out to the centers and wanting to explore those options too, because they're having, kids age out of their services when they could start, receiving services from a center. How can SILS better connect? Again, we can give you this information. Reach out to college and university students with disabilities through their organizations. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, each college, university, community college, they have a Office of Disability Services. We could reach out to them and say, these are some services we could help provide, some peer support, anything along those lines. And what services are needed in your community? We know that is a very big, broad question. Recreation for people with DD in Christian County. Transportation. So that also gives us an insight to transportation is something we probably want to be addressing. Wheelchair sports for people with developmental disabilities, because Special Olympics is great, but they don't have team sports for people who use wheelchairs or have better mobility than power chair users. I mean, that may be something that it doesn't get addressed in the spill with a specific goal, but your center could take that and, it came from our area. Let's take that and see what we could develop in our community. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that. I'm going to put a link to that survey in the chat so that you can take a look at it. If you're wanting more specific information to your center, please let me know. I'm more than happy if it's on a certain topic. I'm more than happy to pull that information out and get it to you. This is a working document as we move along to the final document of the spill. So let me go ahead and I can show you our spill here real quick, how to get to the current spill, and you can take a look at it. Now, it looks daunting. It really does, but it's not. There is a lot in it that is information that's probably not necessary for the average user. just as an aside, since we're recording this, I'm going to place this recording on YouTube, and there will be a link on our website that will say spill training January 19th, and you'll be able to click that link and go to the training. And you can use it for your staff. You can use it for consumers if they have questions about how do you decide what programs you're going to do or what initiatives you're going to start. That will give you a broad overview that you can say, okay, the state strategic plan is this. So we've taken these goals, these ideas. Let me get to that. State plan for this year. It's opening it up. Okay. And really starting with page 2, you can say the spill contains these goals. And, so our center has taken this goal, and this is why we're, planning on a project with emergency preparedness, or we're planning on a civic engagement project. As you go down, it lists the goals, objectives, and activities. So the mission, the goals, we have those same goals right here, those 4 goals. And we took the objectives, the large goal, objectives to be achieved, and action steps. I'm going to scroll down to the next one down here to make it a little easier. So for housing, for the 3-year plan, and this plan actually ends September 30th of 2024. We had an extension year. So anyway, the Centers for Independent Living and other stakeholders, see where we get the community in there, participate in policymaking processes that impact consumer housing options. Again, very, very broad, very open to be able to be tailored to what each center is looking to accomplish. So there'll be some in here that, a housing committee, the Silk Housing Committee will hold an advocacy day at Missouri State Capitol, and we create talking points and tools to utilize in years 2 and 3. Since we're in year 4, that's already happened. But the Housing Committee will facilitate the support of applicable legislation through letters and education of the community. Again, so if you see a letter come to the center and we're asking for consumers to sign on, or sorry about that, asking for consumers to give testimony. I know MoSIL does the same thing, and we're lucky that we can count some of that information as well. That's why it's important for us to be able to count on the centers to get people to sign on to any sort of talking points, letters of support for, or letters against legislation. And then we give some indicators that we use to say, yes, we met this goal, or no, we didn't meet this goal. MoSIL Housing Committee, it outlines some of what they'll do. There was a focus that wanted to be put on increasing the MLS standards listing information to include an accessibility button. You know how you go and if you go and look for a house, you can say, oh, I want it to have 3 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms and a garage, and I want it to be accessible. So that was work that was done over the 3 years, and we were able to meet our goal. Now, when we say 25% of sills, that's 5 sills. And we found that there are some sills that are already doing that. And so that was, have 1 or 2 we can, jump off of is a big help. And they can show the other sills, this is how we did it. This is who we connected with. So we go through the housing, the employment, same thing, the employment, increase competitive and integrated employment for people with disabilities. Again, that could be a job program, that could be PREETs, having someone who you have a consumer and they're able to have competitive employment with work incentive from Social Security. Engage community partners, and so on and so on. That goes through employment. The same with public transportation. And I believe public transportation, it looks like that's really something pushing the housing. Again, work with, action ships, working with people with disabilities to be on commissions. So helping our consumers and staff learn skills to be able to participate in a board or a committee, or to be integrated in those arenas. Like Pat said, nothing about us without us, because let's face it, sometimes I'm guilty of this myself. Sometimes you don't think about it until you're confronted with it, and you're thinking, oh, well, that's really, like he said with the group in the middle of a muddy field. I bet not a one of them thought about that, what was said or what was asked of them, until it hit them smack in the face. So our job is to make sure that we're there at the table to help them realize that this could be a problem before it smacks them in the face in the middle of an emergency. Okay. Stimulate civic engagement of Missourians with disabilities and SILs to result in increased inclusion and independence. Again, very, 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 very big. Making sure that people, and this was written in 2019, so we knew that the election was coming up, and that, civic engagement and voting, something as simple as voting and getting our consumers out to vote, and, making sure that they have unbiased information from both sides of any sort of presentation. To make sure that they had that was something that we wanted to do. So again, you can go through this on your own time. And, if you have questions about the current spill, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help out with that or go further in depth on that. And let me see here. I would like to stop sharing. There we go. Okay. So does anyone have any questions about what the spill really is? Terrific. Email them to me. If you're not comfortable asking them here, please email me. So that's what we're relying on you, the staff, the consumers, families and friends, the general public, consumers. The spill gives an opportunity for consumers to have a say in what they'd like to see their center doing. And the centers receive funding based on the spill. We have 4 what are called Part C centers that receive direct federal funding in Missouri. And we have other centers that receive what's called Part B funding, which goes through the Silk and VR to those centers. So having this plan in place gives the feds, gives ACL an idea of what we're spending their money on. Okay. So what's been done in the past? Pat's given us a really good history on what's been done in the past. And the last couple of spills that I've been involved with, the first one I probably didn't know. I really could have used this type of training. The second one, I was glad to be a little more involved, but I still was a little cautious about what I was doing. So, anytime you think there's a good idea, you think there'd be something that would contribute to this, again, let us know. I'm going to put a link on our webpage, the Silk webpage, that you can email me, and that way you don't have to remember my email all the time. You can just go click email executive director. So, is there any questions? I know in the past we've also mailed surveys. Tammy had reminded me of that. We didn't want to do that this year because you mail surveys out, you got to get them back somehow. And then you have to collate them and put them into a spreadsheet or put them into this Survey Monkey. We do have posters that you can put out in your community that has a QR code on it. We also have, you can take that poster and send it out email that has a link as well to the survey. So if you can get the word out, get more people involved, we'd appreciate it. So are there any questions, anything that someone's not clear about? And I know it's a big document. If you go look at it, again, you're going to see a lot of talk in there about funding and about the centers, preparing for any sort of eventuality that might happen to a center. So,
Karen,
yes. Hi, Eileen.
this is Eileen Dressler. I do have a question, and I
Sure.
apologize. I'm new to all this stuff too. But so what you guys did the survey.
Uh-huh.
What is kind of the next step? And are we supposed to be changing the spill at any point now? Or are we like the one that I've seen is from 2020
Uh-huh.
or 2023. I guess I'm just a little bit confused on what are kind of our next steps. I mean, I agree
Okay.
we should be sending this out, but I don't even know what I'm really sending out
Okay.
then.
Thank you, Eileen. And just for everyone to know, Eileen is one of our newer members of MoSilk. She joined us last year, so I'm really glad that you're here today. The survey continues until I believe we had said January 31st. I believe we're going to extend it to February 15th so we can get more input. So when that survey closes, the committee, which at the moment it stands Pat Chambers, Mike Parker, Wendy Neckemeyer, David Baker, Lisa Meisenheimer, Tammy McSorley, Tony Waterhouse-Leal, and myself, and Stephanie Cooper as the Silk chair. We're all on that committee. We'll take that information and start writing the goals. Start writing those big, huge, overarching goals. And we will work with the center executive directors and the CEOs and the staff that they want to pull in on any sort of input on it, on shaping those goals to make sure that they're solid. And then we'll work on the indicators and we'll work on the steps for those for each year. So right now, you're right, we're still in that current spill, we're still using that, but we have until July 1st to get that new one written. Okay, so we're in the collection phase now. Shortly in the middle of February, we're going to be getting together and moving in and hashing out what we see in that survey and what we hear from any, if the centers want to have any consumer groups, if they want to have their staff get together and say, we'd like to see this as a goal, all the input, and start making those goals. Okay, and just fleshing it out, and we're hoping, fingers crossed, by the beginning of May, it'll be at a point where we can show the rough draft document to the SIL EDs and CEOs and have a finalized product to them around the end of May, so that June we can start gathering signatures. After that, we will have to have the signatures of at least 51% of the centers, their executive directors, and the signature of the Silk chair, and the signature of our designated state entity, which Lisa Meisenheimer from Vocational Rehabilitation, she is their representative that will sign it. And then hey, hi, Lisa. And after the signatures are received, we send it in, and they have until September 30th to get back with us to say, okay, we approve it. No, we'd like to see changes here and there. So we go back. If hopefully there won't be any changes, but if not, we go back, we make the changes, do the whole process again, get the signatures again, and send it in as an updated. And by September 30th, we'll have a new plan for everybody to start working on October 1st.
So I have a question. I'm on the housing committee
Uh-huh.
on this whole thing. So is there an opportunity? I know you're going to send it to the executive directors, but is there an opportunity for those of us who are actually on the different committees to look and see what revisions or changes or addendums need to be done, or how does that work?
I don't think it would be a problem to send the housing, if there's a housing specific piece with goals and objectives and all that, sending it to your committee and saying, do you think this is doable as what the Silk can do? If it specifically refers to Silk Housing Committee, then yes, you guys should have a say on, yes, I think we can do that, or no, that's not something we're able to do with our capacity at the moment. But there'll be things that'll say strictly for the sills that, if the housing committee says, hey, well, hey, we can help you out with that, great, that's a win-win for everybody. But if it's specific to your committee, I don't see why that would be a problem.
Okay, I would like that to happen if that's possible.
Yeah, I know I hate it when somebody tells me you got to do this, and I'm looking at it, it's like, no, I don't even know what you're talking about. So yes, definitely, thank you.
Karen, I'm sorry,
Yes.
there was a request, and I think it's a good thing. Kathy Wyatt said, how can we get the posters to put out to the public so they can utilize the QR code?
I will put those posters, I will send that to you, Kathy. And
but maybe a general link, because
yeah,
maybe other people haven't received them or would like to receive them.
I'll put the link to the poster on our website and say, Spill Community Partner Input Survey, and you can print it out, hang it in your lobby, tack it on the grocery store bulletin board. That's kind of what I've done around here, is put it on the grocery store bulletin board, took it to the library, put it on their bulletin board. So, and I listed off the committee members. It's not a closed committee that we're not taking new members. We're certainly welcoming anybody's input. Everybody has great ideas. We want to hear them. So, any other questions, ideas?
Can I come back to, can I come back to Eileen's point?
Sure.
I know I know the housing. I know the housing committee is going great. Yeah, and please, and please don't be shy about about suggesting any goals you work on that would that would help that would help the spill committee tremendously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to thank you all so much for coming today. It's a nice bright spot on a cold, yucky day. So again, I'll be working on those items I mentioned, getting onto our webpage, a way to email me. I'll get the poster put up there, and get a link to this, this training. So thank you all so very much. I'll stick around for a minute if anybody needs to copy down anything or has any other items they need to chat about, but I'll stop the recording.